Welcome back to Deprogram. This is video 91. Thanks for joining me. I wasn't sure if I should put anything about debunking David Icke in the video title because at the end of this video, I'm going to share a line of thinking with you on transhumanism that should literally just bring an end to it. I'm going to expose the absolute stupidity of the thinking behind transhumanism. And David Icke actually has a clip that helps me make that point. But for the most part, I don't want to debunk David Icke. What I want to do is show you how, if you believe what David Icke is saying, it's going to take meaning out of your life. I'm doing this video on David Icke because I've followed every video he's put out for a number of years now, and I've been a strong supporter of his work. But what I appreciate about David Icke's work is the way he breaks down current events and news. But his spiritual take on things, I believe he's got it all wrong, completely wrong. And what I want to do is I'll react to specific clips in a number of his videos. And so you'll hear his perspective, and then I'll give you my perspective. And then you just have to use logic to see what makes more sense. But ultimately, what I'm trying to do here is help people to have meaning in their life.
Are those who cooperate with death-dealing dictators in the right? Or are we in the wrong? People are hungry. This is truly a time of famine, and not just for want of food, but for want of meaning. The leaders we are cursed with now are meaningless. The truth is, they are not in charge, not in any meaningful sense. We are. We always are.
Meaning is so important. If we don't have meaning, well, we have no meaning. What's the point in being here? Having meaning in your life is the most precious thing. And a lot of people have no idea what they're here for, the meaning of life. It's taken me until only, in recent months to figure this out, which I'll come to. But everything that I'm doing since I've decided to put out a couple of videos, it's all about this fact.
I was thinking once, who's more powerful than kings and potentates, prime ministers and dictators? You've got it, the fourth estate.
Okay, people in the media have much more power than they realize, and we're living in a world where the powerful are completely out of control. So they need to be put back in their place, and the people who actually really have power need to tap into it. And so every video I watch, every content creator I watch, I'm analyzing them to see, is this somebody who would cooperate with other people in the media to provide mankind with the lifeline that we all so desperately need? And I've always thought that David Icke would understand what my purpose here is on this channel. And I just assumed that he would be a supporter of what I'm trying to do here. But I've actually come to realize that he would probably be quite against what I'm doing. And I'll show you why here.
That's fair enough. I don't care what people believe. It's up to them. It's when they impose it on other people that I get interested.
So it could easily be said by David Icke that what I'm doing is trying to push my belief system onto, in my case, it's the police and military. I want them to understand that no man shall murder, rape, assault, trespass, thieve, coerce, or deceive any other man, ever. And yes, I think we need to push that onto the police and military. Is that pushing a belief system? No, it's not a belief system. It's an objective truth, and it is the most important objective truth on planet Earth in all of our lives. Nothing matters more than that to anybody. And so I think that this thing about pushing a belief system is just giving David Icke an excuse to not actually do something that needs to be done. And I never would have thought that he would be looking for an excuse, because David Icke has always said that he does what he does because he sees the direction the world is going, and he would not leave things this way for his children and grandchildren. I believed that. I thought he genuinely cared about the future, about the world we leave behind. If you understand what happens after the body dies, of course you're going to care what we leave behind, because you're going to be back here. So I believed this from David Icke, but then how do you square that against saying...
That's fair enough. I don't care what people believe. It's up to them. It's when they impose it on other people that I get interested.
They can't both be true, unless he realizes that what I'm saying is not a belief system. And I don't know, but I've been getting the sense that David Icke would not be on board with what I'm trying to do. And so that's fair enough. You don't have to be on board, but it's your children and grandchildren that are going to be born into the exact same world that you were born into, only it's going to be a hell of a lot worse. And if you claim you want to make things better, then people have to learn the objective truth, the difference between right and wrong. And that's not a belief system. So let's start off with the first clip about what David Icke says about religion.
I've been talking, I've talked in the Reveal about how religious belief that is unquestionable, that you can't question, that you won't question, is one of the great, and same with political belief, cultural belief, all of them, is one of the great ways that we are, I was going to say we are kept from the truth, but actually, if you think about it, we keep ourselves from the truth by falling for that. Because if you have, let's take a religious belief, and everything in the Bible is true because it's the Word of God. So even the contradictions, well, there may be contradictions, but that's God's will because He wrote it, right? He didn't. And so you have a belief system, and you won't go into any area of research and potential evidence that would put that belief system under question, under threat, because you're not questioning it. That is how it is. End of story. And it means that people like me who will go there, I'm just interested in what's happening. Got no preconceived belief that is unquestioning or unquestionable. You're then sort of seen as ungodly or against God or not believing in Jesus and what have you. That's fair enough. I don't care what people believe. It's up to them. It's when they impose it on other people that I get interested. But
this shows a basic misunderstanding about what... I can't speak about other religions. I can't comment on any other religion other than Christianity because it's the only one I know anything about. In many ways, I agree with what David Icke said in the case of what I call antichrist Christians. I was one of them. I'm not trying to insult people. When you believe everything that comes out of the church and you don't question it, it actually makes you live according to antichrist principles. So, but if you're a real Christian, then you know that the Bible says, have no fear. Depending on who counted, it's somewhere between 100 and 360 something times. There is no more frequently repeated phrase in the Bible than have no fear. We are not permitted to live in fear. Apparently, the Bible talks about burning in the lake of fire once. So what are you going to listen to? If you want to follow the teachings of Christ, what are you going to listen to? This fear of burning in the lake of fire, or you're not permitted to live in fear? When you understand that the physical body is actually just a temporary vessel and your consciousness is going to move through many bodies, you understand why you mustn't live in fear, because even if it kills you, it doesn't really matter. If you die doing the right thing, your next situation will only be better than this one. So that's why living in fear goes against everything that we're put here to do. My point is, Christ said that we have to have love for truth, that those who do not love the truth will not be saved. To have a genuine love for the truth, you always have to be open to all sides of everything. You can't ever be closed off. If you're a Christian, you can't just have one set belief and then never question it, because that's Antichrist. That's an Antichrist way of looking at the world. So when David Icke says this stuff, I'm thinking, but does he understand what Christianity really is? Or is he only talking about the Antichrist Christians? And I'm pretty sure that's what he's talking about, because if you actually understood what Christianity really means, we are obligated to question everything and to never stop questioning. And this is the ironic part about it. As we move through this video, you're going to see that David Icke is the one who's got a set of unquestioned beliefs. He believes what he believes, and I explained to him how that's not logical before he wrote this most recent book. He disregarded everything that I explained to him and went ahead and wrote this book, which proves that nothing that I said penetrated. And that's fine. He's entitled to have his beliefs, but you can't go around then telling other people they're locked into beliefs when you're doing the same thing. And so you'll understand more clearly what I mean as we move through this. We'll start moving through the clips now, and I'll break this all down.
If you have a belief system, a religious belief system that talks about a loving God and that God created the world, and these horrors happen all the time, every day, to innocent kids and others, then you've really got a problem in explaining the cognitive dissonance between a loving God and the world that, quote, he created, producing such horror. I mean, if you just take the so-called natural world, it's a killing field. Yeah. If you look at the way this world is set up, everything survives by something else not surviving, often not surviving in an horrific way.
You watch a video of a lion and a zebra, it's brutal, absolutely brutal.
Yeah, I mean, you look at these things, and a loving God has set it up so that a wildebeest is torn to smithereens by a lion.
The natural world definitely is a brutal place. David claims to understand what is commonly known as simulation theory, or he often talks about the headset and the fact that we're in a type of advanced virtual reality. I don't like any of these terms. I don't think that they put an accurate impression into people's minds about the true nature of reality. But if David actually understood these things that he talks about so much, he should be able to see that the natural world is here for us. We have to care for it. We have the ability to destroy it. So that gives us the responsibility to care for it. When we look at the suffering in the natural world, that should inspire us to transcend physicality, which we can. This physical existence is like a base place, a training school, which David Icke rejects wholeheartedly, even though I've explained how it is that. He won't have a bar of it, and that's fine, but I'm going to explain how he's wrong. When we look at the suffering in the natural world of like animals being eaten alive and all the trauma that goes on, this should inspire us to transcend this physical state. And that's what we came here to do. This physical existence that we're all in was not supposed to go on for all eternity. We're supposed to grow in consciousness to the point that physicality is no longer necessary. Physicality brings consequences, hard, painful consequences of aging, of violence. It's all about coming to learn God's laws. Once you learn God's laws and you understand that we are all here to move away from fear and towards love, we will no longer need to learn from the suffering that physicality brings with it, and we will transcend physicality. But first we have to understand what it's all about.
And we need urgently, I suggest, to reevaluate what this, quote, God really is. Now, I'm not saying for a second that there's not a benevolent force. I do not deny that. But can we explain how a benevolent, loving force created this shithole of emotional trauma, physical trauma, mental trauma? How does that sink? And so you have, I saw this quote, it was posted on the internet from a priest called, calls himself a priest, a Calvin Robinson, who's also, of the right, if you like, in politics.
Very much so.
And he said about what had happened in Southport, Almighty Father, receive into the arms of thy mercy all innocent victims. Okay. Why does a loving God create a situation where there are innocent victims, Calvin? And by thy great might, frustrate the designs of evil men and establish thy rule of justice, love, and peace. Well, okay. Well, if you've got great might, why are you not doing something about the horrors of this world? And through Jesus Christ, thy Son, our Lord, who liveth and reigneth with thee, in the unity of the Holy Spirit, ever one God, world without end. Amen. Well, and what does that actually say? Mm-hmm. I'm sick of this stuff, and it goes on everywhere where people...
Now, I have to say, I'm with him 100% on this ridiculous bullshit. I'm so sick of this bullshit as well. This virtue signaling holy talk, it doesn't even make sense, this rubbish where they sort of deify Jesus as if clearly telling everyone they have no understanding of what the Bible is actually trying to tell us, yet they're there on the pulpits making fools of themselves. But what I don't agree with is the way David Icke is trying to make God responsible for the actions of men. He says, how do you square these brutal things that happen to innocent people with a loving God? But David, God is not a wishing fairy. Just because bad things happen, it's not as though God could have just put his hand in like a big, benevolent giant and just saved the victims. It doesn't work like that. God set up this place with laws. And it is the way the laws work. That is how you know God is a loving God. And you have to understand systems. If you understand the law, you'll understand the system, and that's how you know that God is a loving God. The law is, no man shall commit murder, rape, assault, trespass, thieve, coerce, or deceive, or deception. You know what I'm saying? If everybody understood that law and lived by it, there would be nobody stealing anything from anybody else, so the bankers wouldn't be able to harvest all the wealth of the world and leave everybody in poverty. Everybody would have abundance. Nobody would need to go around and be violent and steal. It's the most simple law, and if we abide by it, we all get to live very rich and abundant lives. If it stays hidden, which is why I'm so disappointed with David Icke, because I believe this needs to be propagated far and wide, and instead of acknowledging what I'm saying, he ignores me. So if you want to make a better world, why are you ignoring me? Because everybody needs to be getting, if everybody talks about this law, it will quickly come to many more minds than just mine that this needs to get to the police and military, because they're the ones that break this on a daily basis. They're the ones who will be coming back into bodies that are only going to go through more and more suffering over time because they're not getting the message. We are going to keep suffering and suffering and suffering, and things are going to get worse and worse and worse until we come to terms with the law that dictates the quality of all human life in the aggregate. If we all understand that law collectively and live by it, I don't want to sound like I'm one of these, utopian people that has his head in fantasy. It's not a fantasy. It's not utopia. It's what our creation was intended to be. But they've hidden this simple, I have a real problem with Catholics. And again, I was one. So it always seems that the people I have the biggest problems with are people that are still doing things that I used to do. I was raised a Catholic. I used to go to the communion and put my hand out like this and get this piece of like wafer. And every time I did it, I thought, this is wrong. This is like, a ritual of cannibalism. I never liked it. And I dropped it as soon as my grandmother took me to church for the first 11 years of my life. When my dad went to prison, I stopped visiting my grandmother and I stopped going to church. So I dropped Catholicism pretty young. But now that I know that the Catholic Church has it was about 10 years ago, they had $20 trillion. And I'm not against anybody having wealth. But if you're a church and you've got $20 trillion, there is no excuse for poverty anywhere, because that's enough to end poverty everywhere. So there's obviously something wrong with the Catholic Church. Everybody should be able to see that. If you can't see it, then there's something wrong with you, because it's really in your face. But the thing is, those 7 sins that I talk about all the time, they're the real sins. This greed, gluttony, pride, they're not sins. The fact that the Catholic Church confused the real 7 deadly sins with these silly vices has proven to me that the Catholic Church is the enemy of mankind, because everybody should know. But the thing is, if everybody knew that no man is permitted to murder, rape, assault, trespass, thieve, coerce, or deceive another man, then there would be no police and military. Or if there were, they would not do what they do. The entire military industry could not function. The world wouldn't be as it is. So they had to hide that. They had to hide that to have the control structures in place that hold us all into line, which is religion and politics. Religion and politics die the moment everybody understands the real 7 deadly sins. So I hope that makes sense. I can't believe David Icke, of all people, can't see this. How can you blame God? God gave us the best law we could ask for. You couldn't ask for a more abundant place. We have everything right at our fingertips, and the only reason we can't access it is because the police and military don't know about that law and they break it every day of their lives. You can't blame God for that. That's their fault. And it's your fault for not telling them about it. And I don't know if it's cowardice. I don't know if it's stupidity. I don't know what the reason is, but we need to be getting this message across. Blaming God and then to go as far as to say as our world was created by demons. I mean, for heaven's sake. So let's go to that now.
This world, when actually this distortion consciousness actually created the world we're experiencing. If you look at their holy books, they are calling for hell and damnation. They're basically saying to you, in terms of the Islamic God and the Christian God, I'm going to create you. I'm going to put you in a shithole where you're going to have enormous, enormous challenges, often none of your own creation. And then whether you are there for a few seconds or more than 100 years, I'm going to judge you on your behavior for all frickin' eternity. It's ridiculous. And so you add that to the cognitive dissonance of a loving God in the world that we live in, and surely we can ask the question, has a loving God actually created this reality?
Yep.
Or is it more likely to have been one of great psychopathic malevolence who has created a world in which people suffer physically, mentally, emotionally to survive another day? That's what most of the human race is doing, trying to survive another day. And that, as I've said in the books, this force which actually created this reality, this simulation, this simulated reality, is feeding off the low vibrational, emotional, mental energy that is produced when people have these emotional, mental, physical traumas. Is that not more likely that you have created basically a world specifically designed for the population you have perceptually entrapped to produce this low vibrational energy which you are feeding off? I mean, if you go to, symbolically to the Matrix movies, and how the machines were being powered by those babies in that situation that was portrayed, and that the energy that the babies were giving off, the electromagnetic energy, was actually feeding the machines. Well, something like that is what this world is actually all about. And what if that you were manipulated, not just to not see that, but to actually worship the force that's doing it while you think it's a loving force?
Stockholm syndrome at the base,
100%. So I'm not saying there's not a benevolent force. No. I'm saying that exists beyond this simulation, which was created by anything but a loving force.
So let's get this straight. Demons created our entire physical planet Earth. just to entrap all of us so that we would suffer, because when we suffer, they can feed off our suffering energy. And that's all it's all about. That's it. I mean, if you want to take meaning out of people's lives, give them that. And the thing is, if it made sense, I'd be on board with it. But it's illogical. There's no logic to that. David is blaming the Creator for the fact that evil entities have been able to run riot here. But they actually have no power. The evil entities that have really done a number on us, the only power they have is because they have been studying us for God knows how many thousands of years. So they understand us. They understand our motivations. They understand that's the power that they have, is they understand how we work. And then they work with leaders to manipulate populations. That's the power that they have. But if the populations understand God's law, they have no power. It's only that they've managed to hide the truth about the laws that dictate the quality of our lives, that they just keep doing a number on us. So look at the two different options. Demons created our world to feed off loosh, or suffering energy. Or God created our world with laws that we need to come to terms with and live by so that we could transcend the physical world. But in the meantime, the physical world would become quite literally a utopia. When you have a population that understands that simple law and lives by it, there is no taxes, there is no bank debt, there is no violence because there's no need for violence because everybody's wealthy. Is that not a utopia? I mean, it is a utopia and it sounds like a fantasy, but it's actually the most logical thing that should happen. The only reason it doesn't happen is because the police and military have been kept in the dark about the laws that they break all day, every day of their lives. And they suffer for it tremendously. They have the highest rates of PTSD, the highest rates of stress leave, the highest rates of domestic violence. Look at the suffering of police and military. And look at the suffering they inflict outwardly, because it's a law that works in the aggregate. So their behavior actually affects all of us in the whole. And all we have to do is get that truth across to them, and so they actually see it as clearly as I see it, and they'll stop doing what they're doing. Nobody has to pay any more taxes. Nobody has to pay any more bank debt. Nobody has to comply with all the bullshit laws that restrict everything we want to do. Automatically, everybody becomes free. How can you say that this world was created by demons when the potential that we have here is so unbelievably bright? How can you say that? How can you think that? You know, when I was deciding if I'd make this video or not, what made me finally decide I have to make it is I really feel sorry for David Icke that he actually believes this. If I had to accept the fact that the only reason I was put here was so that I could suffer, so that invisible entities could feed off my suffering energy, I wouldn't stick around in this place. I would find a way to kill myself permanently. And that's not easy to do, because when you understand you are consciousness, you actually can't kill yourself. You're not going anywhere, David Icke. You're going to be back here. If you want to escape into the infinity, which is not infinity, but you don't have to die for that. All you have to do is shut your brain up for a minute and you can go there. Everybody can do it and should do it, because really, you need to get to know who you really are so that You don't have to fear death, so that you know where you're going to go when your body dies. You can experience that now. You don't have to like transcend that through some, you know, be it near-death experience or a trip on, you know, psychedelics or any of that. All you have to do is shut your brain up for long enough to experience being. And I actually don't think David Icke's ever done this. He talks about all this spiritual stuff, but if he actually did it, he would know that you don't have to worry about where you're going to go when your body dies. You can do it here, now. So I really feel sad for David Icke that he's bought into this. I mean, he didn't buy into anything. He actually made it up himself. It's a belief system that he made up for himself. He's the only one that actually believes that all this was created just so demons could feed off our suffering energy. Let me explain how I know this. We were created with motivations, right? Us, people. So we are motivated by love, by hunger, by giving. When you think about the majority of people, if you ask the majority of people what they want to do, what makes them happy, most people who are like slightly evolved will say that the most rewarding thing they can do is help others. That is where we get a lot of satisfaction from, is helping others. We have these motivations and they're inherent. They're just a part of our biology. Okay, now let's look at demons and let's look at the psychopaths who work with the demons, and for all we know, they could actually be the same thing. The psychopaths are just demons in physical form. They are motivated by our suffering energy. They want us to suffer. They feed off our suffering energy. God had to program them that way because they deliver us consequences. When we don't abide by God's laws, there's demons out there that will encourage foolish people to commit acts of violence, and suffering increases. And the more suffering increases, the more the demons get to feed on our loosh. So they had to be created with something that would motivate them to cause our suffering. Suffering is a part of learning. You have to suffer to learn what not to do. You know, if you touch the fire, you burn your hand, you don't touch it again. This is how come God's laws were never meant to be hidden for so long. This stuff that I'm talking about should have been understood hundreds of years ago. The evil entities were programmed the way they were to deliver us consequences, to nudge us towards God's laws. When we all come to terms with God's laws, we will have such an unbelievable experience here, and we will rapidly transcend the need for the physical world, which we can all do anytime, anyway. You don't have to die for that. You just have to quiet your mind down. So what makes more sense to you? Demons created all this just so they could feed on suffering energy? Or God created all this and he created demons as well?
Yeah. Well, in the biblical text, God says in Isaiah, I create the good and I create the evil. Do what I say, the Lord.
So that they would nudge us towards learning about God's laws so that we could all learn and grow together. And it is all about learning. So let's move on with another clip.
Do you think that we then are here to evolve? Because the question would be then, if you do, maybe we're enough. Maybe our consciousness and our potential that is somewhat largely untapped, maybe there's nothing to do. Maybe the evolution, maybe there's nothing to do. But if we are here to evolve, if we are here to get off planet, to be able to repopulate somewhere else, what happens? I mean, I've spoken to Randall Carlson and other people who talk about how many things are coming at this planet from asteroids to destroy us. Like, the inevitability of destruction is there. So then how do we evolve? What is that next step? Because I think this stuff is frightening. I think consciousness is the pure potentiality, and that when you tap into a system, you are now limited by only the system, which doesn't tap into the field of potentiality. So I'm on board with that. But what is the next step? How do we evolve as humans if that is our goal? Where do we go? What do we do? What do we become?
Well, we've already gone into levels that the mainstream alternative media doesn't deal
Right,
with
for
very
sure.
much. But let's now go into levels it doesn't deal with at all. The levels where the answers lie, as well as the true scale of human control. Are we here to evolve? No, it's a trap.
As I said at the start, I'm making this video because I want people to have meaning in their lives, because there is meaning. There is a very powerful reason for being here, to move away from fear and towards love. The reason I played that short clip with Billy Carson there, and then I let Danica say all of that, was because what she said there about the inevitability of being destroyed by something from the cosmos. Billy Carson talks about space and, the faraway universes and entities that come from off planet very often. Both of them, and David Icke, a lot of people talk about the simulation theory, or the fact that we're in a virtual reality. The only thing that's virtual about it is the place where you go in consciousness when you quiet your mind down. That's actually more real than the physical. So in that sense, the physical is only virtual because it's beneath consciousness. Where you go in consciousness can actually impact things in the physical. So consciousness is primary and physical is secondary. So in that sense, physical is sort of subservient to the consciousness level of things, but it's still real. Once you understand how this works, you should no longer be asking questions about other planets and off-planet and other galaxies, and none of that exists unless you actually observe it. It renders when we observe it. But why would we be looking to observe anything off-planet when we still don't know right from wrong? We haven't even started to take baby steps as a civilization. And we have these fools talking about, and when I'm thinking of Elon Musk here, like, to go to Mars. There is no Mars. So I just wanted to mention that about this. The idea of going off planet is just a total fool's errand. It's a lot of people think Elon Musk is highly intelligent. A highly intelligent person would not talk about going off planet. It's not there. It's not even rendered unless you observe it. So sure, you can create a rocket and go as far as you can. You're never going to get past the radiation belts and we're not there yet. We're not going to get there until a long way after we first learn right from wrong. When we learn right from wrong, and then we don't have to worry about AI turning against us, which is what it's being pushed into doing by the ruling class. They want it to be turned against us. So when we overcome these hurdles, think about traveling then. And what you'll find is the real traveling of the cosmos that we do is internal. The cosmos is within. When you quiet down that noise in your head, that's when you will travel the cosmos. It's a much more vast place than the physical. And I just think it's so sad for David Icke to think that all of this, and I mean, I've had a lot of struggle in my life. I've not had an easy life, but I can see the beauty of this world. I can't imagine what David must have been through to have come to such a dark conclusion that all this was created by demons just to trap us, even though we haven't learned right from wrong yet. I mean, why don't we see, and I've said this on an email to David Icke, if demons created what we're living in, and it's all just for the purpose of being a trap, then let's teach the police and military right from wrong. And if nothing changes, then I'll be on board with what you're saying. And he just ignores me. So, all right, but now I'm telling you guys about it because it's not logical to think that we've been thrust into this trap with nothing to learn. There's no evolution to be done. See, Danica was just asking him about how do we evolve? The evolution of every individual being is to get away from fear and towards love. To get another way of looking at it is to stop being selfish and just focused on me, and start putting your energy on others, giving. That's growth. That's how we evolve. We evolve away from fear, away from selfishness, and towards love, and towards caring, and towards generosity. That's the evolution that we all need to do. That's why we're here. And the reason that this is what we're supposed to do, in my view, what came to me through meditation is, whatever created us is outside of the physical. It's also outside of the place where we go in consciousness. There are other beings there, but whatever created us is not there either. It's on the outside of this, and it's non-physical. If it's non-physical, then there can't be sexual reproduction. So whatever entities are there that created this experience we're having, the physical world, cannot engage in sexual reproduction. But we can do that. We do that here. And it's created billions of us. And with each and every one of us is the potential for interesting things, for change, for new information. Every person brings with it new information, new creativity. And these entities that are in the outside of the physical, if they don't have sexual reproduction, they can't reproduce themselves in the same way we do. We can split so many different individual units of consciousness, all with different variations, that from the outside, from the side that our creators are on, if they wanted to bring more information over to them, to have more stimulation on their side, this would be a good way to do it, to set up a training school where there's the potential to create millions and billions of people, all with our own set of whatever we bring to the table. But the point is, if they created this, they are way evolved beyond anything we can imagine. If they're that far evolved, they don't have fear. They don't go around, committing violence against each other. They don't make threats and scare people with ideas about, burning in hell for all eternity and this rubbish. They would be highly, highly advanced beings. So what sort of company would they want around them? Advanced beings. They would want loving, caring, generous beings to be among them. So that's what we're here to do, to become that, to become loving, caring, generous beings who are not fearful. I mean, if you ever had a friend, and I've had a friend like this, who's always like worried and paranoid and stressed out and thinking about everything that's going to go wrong. If you've ever been around someone like that, it's a nightmare. Like, you don't want to be around people like that. They're just horrible to be around. Who wants to think about just paranoid thoughts that aren't even really there? Just fear. Fear is ugly. It's unpleasant. The only time we should be fearful is when we know we have to protect ourselves from something that is a clear and present danger. But a lot of fears that people have are just completely ridiculous. And whatever created us is far too advanced to want to associate with such fearful little entities. So that's what it is to evolve, is to evolve away from fear. Like when Danica just said that she's terrified, that's not going to be welcome on the other side of where we are now. Fear is not welcome. It's the one thing that we're told, as I said, hundreds of times in the Bible, and it makes sense. You don't have to have been here for very long to know that if you base your decisions on fear, you always have negative outcomes. It's just the way it works. I mean, I didn't make the rules. I'm just here like you, experiencing them. Whenever you make decisions, there might be something to be afraid of, but you just challenge it. You go ahead anyway, and 9 times out of 10, whatever you were afraid of didn't eventuate, and better outcomes start to unfold. This is all a part of, I see this as a part of the laws, the way it's set up. When you live in fear, you generate the circumstances that actually you need to be afraid of. And so I hope that makes sense about, worrying about off-planet things and being afraid of that sort of stuff. That's all nonsense. The only thing you have to be afraid of is how long are we going to live in this world where 99.9% of people can't even define the difference between right behavior and wrong behavior. That's what you need to be afraid of.
A big thing that I think every child should be taught at the first moment they're able to grasp it is that when you look through your eyes, you're into the space that you appear to be looking at, you're not seeing everything in that space. You're only seeing a tiny, tiny band of frequency called visible light. So first of all, why I say children need to know that at the earliest age possible is because that changes everything. Now you can understand that there are whole worlds, realities that are happening in the same space that you are operating in, but in...
I want you to ask yourself a question. If you were going to say that children should all know something as soon as they can talk, basically, what's the first thing that all children should know? That they're not seeing everything that is in front of them in the physical world? That's what David believes. Or how about nobody is allowed to murder, rape, assault, trespass, thieve, coerce, or deceive anybody else? Would that not be something that would be better to teach children as soon as they're old enough to know what those words mean? Because worrying about what's not in the physical is not going to help children to grow into more advanced beings. As children, it might give them nightmares. It might make them impossible. You might not be able to put them to bed in peace at night. And I've never even had children. And I can see how, or should I say, I can't see where the benefit is in telling children that there's stuff around them that they can't see. Like, that would just terrify them. And for what benefit? Like David explained the benefit there, that it opens you up to new worlds. Well, we can all exercise our imagination throughout our lives, but telling children that there's stuff there that they can't see, I mean, you find whatever you want, but if there was going to be one thing that every parent should tell their children as soon as their children are old enough to talk, it's that you should not violate the rights of other people. If parents did that, nobody would sign up for the police and military. These banking families would have not harvested all the wealth of the world that we're now in a position where if we don't figure out a way to take it back, we're pretty much screwed. We wouldn't be in this predicament if children were taught that as soon as they could talk. But instead, you want to teach them that there's stuff there that you can't see. I mean, for what for? We've always got an imagination. That's not going to go away. I want to go on to child sacrifice. Danica is going to ask David a question about it, and I just don't think he knows the answer, but he's going to attempt to answer. So you have a look.
We have this global cult, a global network of secret societies that is driving the direction of human society way beyond presidents and prime ministers.
Sure. Well, when you mentioned presidents and the Bushes, I mean, the Skull and Bones and different secret societies have been, spoken about for some time now.
Yeah, but there is a whole web of them which interconnect. I was looking at the way that this global cult worked, but then I started to realize that these famous, now billionaire people who were these cultists who were running this cult, although the real people in control are always in the shadows, they were taking part in satanic ritual and human sacrifice ritual. And I came across all this in detail in the 1990s, met lots of people that had taken part in them, often against their will.
Wow.
And so the question then was, well, what are they doing sacrifice rituals for?
Yeah, exactly.
And then the pennies start to drop and the dots start to connect. You go back to the ancient world and you see that they were doing sacrifice rituals all over the planet in the different cultures to the gods. And then there came a point where humans, most of them anyway, reached a point of maturity where they weren't having that anymore. So it went underground and into secrecy, what we now call Satanism. You then start to realize that these gods actually exist. They're not gods at all, bunch of prats, but they're perceived as gods by these people who worship them. Who are these gods? And you realize that the gods, quote, that these people today, these cultists today, many famous people are doing these rituals to, these sacrificial rituals to, are also the same gods that the ancients were doing rituals to. So who are these gods? And when you really, really want to get to the bottom of what's going on, you have to research so many different subjects. It's no good researching the history of the Republican Party or the Democrat Party. You've got to go much deeper into the nature of reality itself. These sacrifices to the gods. Okay, so what do the gods get out of it? And it's exactly what I'm describing. What's happening in these sacrificial rituals is they're designed purposely to build up maximum terror in the victim. And as this terror is generated by the victim, this very intense, powerful, low vibrational energy, these entities in the astral are feeding off that energy, because if someone's having an emotional experience, emotional reaction, or they're thinking something, you can see the body language, especially emotion. You can see the body language.
Some of us wear it on our face. Some of our energies are very strong, and it's very easy to sense. So absolutely, we can all relate to that.
But what you can't see are the frequencies coming off people, because that's an astral phenomenon. That's going into the astral, those low vibrational frequencies. And therefore, these entities, the gods in the astral, are feeding off this energy. And at the same time, when the terror reaches a certain level, a massive infusion of adrenaline goes into the blood. And these Satanists conducting the ritual in our reality then drink the blood. This is where adrenochrome. All this stuff comes from, yeah.
And so it's usually with children, right?
Yeah, it's usually with children. I mean, when they talked about sacrificing young virgins to the gods, that's just code for children.
Why children?
Well, because there's when children go through puberty, we see that in this human reality as a chemical transition, a chemical transformation. We call it puberty. That chemical transformation, like everything in our human reality is an expression of a vibrational transformation. And these entities want that energy before that transformation. I mean, of course, they can take energy from adults, of course, and they do. But I mean, that's the nectar to them. That's the ideal for them, that they want that prepubescent energy of children. And there's many other reasons for it as well, but that's one of them.
So I'm clear. So the sacrifice is to attract the God, the energy that they want to come into the space, and then the consumption of the blood, of the adrenochrome from the adrenaline going into the blood, is then what's consumed by the group that's there.
Yeah, but that's the difference. But they both are the result of terror, which they generate in the ritual.
Yeah.
And this is what I say to people. It's been very difficult to get over, and I don't understand it because most people don't come across this stuff in everyday life.
No.
But it's very difficult to get across to people the scale of pure evil that we're dealing with, and I call evil the absence of love. And these entities have no interest in love. It's not an energy that they can absorb because they're way out of the frequency of that. You have this matrix set up to generate this energy. That's why, look through human history, it's war and suffering, hunger, and oh dear.
I'm wondering how this makes them more powerful. How does this make those people more powerful?
Well, it empowers them energetically. What I talked earlier about politics is about getting the collective humanity to give its power away to an individual or a few to dictate events for the next 4 years, 5 years in some countries. Well, it's the same thing. They are leeching, vampiring your energy, and it's empowering them. And then they recycle that back against you in terms of control and what they do. When I
let that play a bit longer because there's two things that I want to address. As I said, Danica's asking why children, and I don't know about you, but for me, that didn't look to me like she got a satisfactory answer. I don't think she did. The other thing I want to address is these entities that David's talking about. I like the way he says that evil is the absence of love. And he said how these entities don't give a damn about love. They don't think about joy or any positive emotion. So these entities will work with whoever's weak enough to work with them. So these evil families who work with them, the benefit that they get is they understand human psychology because these entities have been observing us for thousands of years. So the entities give these cult families information about human psychology, and that's how come they just run rings around us with social engineering. They manipulate everything that comes through the media, through the Tavistock Institute. All mainstream media is basically mind control. They know how to do mind control in a highly skilled way because they're getting information from entities who have been watching us for thousands of years. But the entities themselves have no power. There could be one in the room right now. It can't touch me. It can't do anything to me. It's a powerless thing. If I wanted to work with it and get information from it, it could probably tell me how to manipulate someone, but it can't do anything. The only way these evil entities have power is by recruiting, as I said, these cult families, and the cult families control the police and military, and then they are powerful. But the point that I'm getting at is, what makes more sense to you? These entities feed off the suffering of children especially, because that suffering energy is just the nectar to them, and they get, what was the word? prepubescent energy is just a nectar to them. That's David's explanation. My explanation is they were programmed the same way that we're programmed to be motivated by love or by hunger or by sex. We are programmed with the drives that we have by caring, these are our motivations. These evil entities, they are programmed to be motivated by especially the suffering of children. Now, Danica asked, why children? If I was asked that question, why children? I would say, well, would it not make more sense that the reason they get more from the suffering of children is because it's meant to kick us up the arse so we protect our children? Would that not make more sense? You know, like we have an inherent protective drive in us that we want to protect our young. So now that we know that these entities exist and they feed off the suffering of children, should we not spread the information that will put these entities into remission? You know, so when everybody knows that murder, rape, assault, trespass, theft, coercion, and deception are wrong, and you don't do them, and it doesn't matter if you work for the government or not, you don't engage in that, and you certainly don't protect the politicians and the bankers who do it. When we know that as a collective, then we can get rid of these politicians and bankers and deal with them because they're putting our children into sacrifice rituals. So we get rid of them, the people that do that sort of stuff. And then the evil entities have no one to work with. And they're like a cancer that just goes into remission. Wouldn't that make more sense? I mean, make more sense than what? I don't even think David answered the question. They just feed just to get energy? Yeah, well, we eat to get energy and we all have our motivations. But what for? Why? Why? And I think some of the reason I know this stuff is because I always ask why? From the time I was, my earliest memories, I keep asking why. And I like the way Danica was asking why there, but I don't think she got an answer. But I think I've given you an answer that makes a lot more sense. The reason they are programmed to most satisfy their drive from the suffering of children is because they are only here to provide us consequences. They are here to serve us. Even though they're evil, even though they're programmed to thirst for our suffering, it is actually a service to us. When you understand that, and you understand that what they get from children should actually prompt us, doesn't it all just make more sense? We're supposed to protect children. Now that we know these entities are out there looking for people who will work with them to sacrifice children, how about we get rid of the people who work with them? How about we teach everybody about the laws that prosperity depends upon so that this shit stops happening, you know, and then we can actually live in God's creation the way it was intended? Wouldn't that all make a lot more sense? And so then going on to how he said, you know, that evil is the absence of love. It's just perfect. I mean, David is spiritually tapped into something, but he's just gone astray, in my view. That's exactly what it is. These entities, they can't experience love. They can't experience joy. They weren't programmed with that. It's not something that God gave them. So imagine if you were one of them. Imagine if you were born as an entity that is surrounded by beings that they can see us, but we can't see them. They can't affect us. They have no power over us. But in certain instances, we can do certain things that the billionaire class do to work with them. And the only satisfaction that they can get is from our suffering. They aren't motivated by love. Imagine that. I mean, as strange as it sounds, you kind of got to have a bit of empathy for these things. They can't experience happiness. They can't experience joy. They can't experience love. Do you reckon they might deserve to be a little bit resentful? Do you think they might have a reason for hating God? I mean, if I was created as an entity that was only put here to serve another species with consequences, but actually all the happiness and joy and love that I got to watch them enjoy, I could never experience that, I'd be pretty resentful. I would hate the creation. I would hate all the entities that were created, and I would certainly hate the creators for putting me here in that situation. If you think about it this way, it all makes a lot more sense. They are designed to hate us. They have to deliver the consequences that we need that will nudge us towards learning the truth about right and wrong. You know, it's kind of sad for them when you think about it. As evil as they are and all the suffering that they cause, they have a very sad existence. And now, we're in a time now where we, as a collective human race, have to make a decision. Are we going to continue along with the status quo? Because they will destroy this creation. Do you blame them? Did you just put yourself in their shoes after I explained that? Can you blame them for wanting to destroy this? Can you blame them for using the tools of like CO2, as David says, it's the gas of life, this clean, invisible trace element that we are literally dependent upon for survival? Does it not make sense now why we're being told that the gas of life is a pollutant and we need to get rid of it? Can you blame them for helping whatever scumbag men to create weapons that destroy things? They do want to destroy this whole creation, including themselves, because they don't want to be here. And you can't really blame them. But we're responsible for us. And so what are we going to do? Let them destroy the creation so the demons don't have to suffer? Or how about if we just learn right from wrong so they have no option but to just go back into remission? Now, some of you may remember I did make this point already in a previous video. But before we go on to what I want to share with you about transhumanism, I want you to hear what David Icke has to say about the fact that we are here to evolve. And this is quite sad for me to hear him say this, not only because of everything I've already explained to you throughout this video, but just for people to have meaning. I mean, I believe we all know that this experience is a test. If I had to count the amount of times that I have said to myself, this is a test, I couldn't count it. It's like throughout a lifetime, we all know we're being tested over and over and over. And all these tests are trying to get us to grow away from fear and towards love. We all should know that life is a test. Otherwise, what's the point to it all? That's what gives life meaning, is overcoming the challenges that we're here to overcome so that we can grow from a fearful, kind of a useless, fearful person into a courageous, fearless person who is loving and generous and not mean and fearful. That's the path. So this clip really saddens me, but listen to it anyway.
Yeah, what I didn't buy is, like I say, something you mentioned earlier, is that we come here to evolve and learn lessons. I think that's total tosh. Tell me what lessons the kids in Gaza are currently learning. It's ludicrous.
They're learning that military troops don't know the difference between right and wrong behavior. How about that? Would that be a valuable lesson worth learning?
Oh, I've been cut up by a serial killer, and I've been left in a fridge. Oh, it's a great lesson. I really fantastic. You know, it's ludicrous. The point is, though, that you can get out of all this so long as you change your self-identity from the identities they give you here it's you're just a human, and you're the labels of a human life. That's who you are, and or you're subordinate to some judgmental God who loves you. Or in the astral, oh, well, you're here to learn lessons, and oh, yes, oh, you've got your karma, and oh, you're going to go back and pay back your karma, and all this stuff. It's nonsense. The thing is, it's not a little bit bloody nonsense. It's all nonsense. The whole thing is a bloody trick. What all these things do is produce enormous, fantastic amounts of what Robert Monroe called loosh, i.e., this low vibrational, emotional, mental energy. That's what is happening all around us all the time, in conflict and war and suffering and bombing and hunger and desperation. And that's the reason to produce this bloody energy. It's not to evolve.
With all due respect, David, I would ask you to put a little bit more thought into this, because we are here to evolve, and we all have a lot of evolving to do. But now I want you all to listen to what David Icke has to say about the mind wipe that happens in between lives.
I started looking at near-death experiences, and I've watched and read enormous numbers of these near-death experience accounts, and they are very, very common in theme. What I found interesting is talking to people who remember the incarnation process. And again, they're very common in what they say, who somehow have not had the mind wiped like everyone else does as part of coming into the matrix. Because when you come into this field, you have to have your mind wiped, because then you start with a blank sheet of paper. You're bloody clueless. You don't know who you are, where you are. That's the idea. Because if you were having life after life and you remembered it while you were experiencing a human life, you'd know what was bloody going on.
Right.
So one of the things that I found interesting is when people are talking about this astral dimension, they talk about it in like physical terms. It's not the dense physicality that we have, but it's a form of physicality. And also how the incarnation process is very technological. I go into this in the book and quote people who describe this. And one of them talks about how she remembers coming into this reality and passing through a electromagnetic field that was, as she entered, similar to what
I've heard about that, like the density of it, the coming down, the density of that, the physical experience of that.
Yeah, the density of this reality, the human reality, is described in terms of being almost impossible to experience. It's
I've heard that too.
But also that this lady was talking about how she passed through this electromagnetic field that is designed to wipe your mind as you come in. It's like, remember those old tapes where you used to rub them over a electromagnetic magnet, and it would wipe them and you could use them again. That kind of principle. When people were talking about when they left the body in a near-death experience, they described how it was just amazing, like nothing they'd ever experienced before. Yeah. There was a bliss, a love I'd never experienced before. And you go, well, hold on a minute. You obviously believe in reincarnation. Oh, yeah, I believe in reincarnation. So why haven't you, what do you mean you've not experienced it before? You must have experienced it loads and loads of times. But because of the mind wipe, when you leave the body, that mind wipe is still in place. And they want you up this tunnel with a light at the end, or a light, or however it's symbolized. And of course, we are told in the world of human to relate the light to God. And so when we leave, you go to the light, and you're in the wheel of samsara, as the Buddhists talk about. The reincarnation cycle, and you come back here in another form with a different personality program.
Right.
And then when you leave the body, not least because this mind wipe is still in place, you listen to these near-death experiences, and when they leave the body, they find themselves with spirit guides or religious heroes. If you're a Christian, you'll see this. If you're a Muslim, you'll see some Islamic hero and what have you, and so on and so forth. You might see loved ones. I go into what they really are in the reveal, and basically, because you're in a state of confusion, mind wipe, you follow them.
Okay, so let's address this mind wipe and what David Icke thinks are your loved ones who you will meet if you need to after your body dies. I've already explained this in the past, but I'll say it again. The mind wipe is just a superficial memory wipe, which we need in order to function properly in our next experience. So let me explain that a bit further. This is a good opportunity for me to thank you guys for listening to my video 87. It was very much just a personal video about me. I shared how I was very confused about my heritage and stories about my father. And I'll tell you something else why I'm so grateful that I had a place to offload that information. Because I didn't see or speak to my dad for more than a year before he passed away, I was living with huge regret. And it was about 9 years of my life that I woke up every morning. The first thing that I would think of was that my dad was gone, that this is the world that I'm in now, that my dad's not in anymore. It was the first thing in my mind for 9 years. And after I made that video, I was able to start getting up in the morning and thinking about something else first. So that was a huge, a really powerful tool for me to process whatever I had going on. So thank you. Thank you all for listening to that. It helped me so much getting that stuff off my chest. So the reason I mention that is because if I spent 9 years unable to think freely, because the first moment when you wake up in the morning is a very precious moment. Your thoughts haven't started to sort of ramp up yet, and you have a moment of clarity. Whatever things might come to you when you first wake up, before your conscious mind starts getting into gear, you might find that to be valuable information. I have. I'm going to share more with you about that shortly. But I spent 9 years without that. The first thing I would think of every day is Dad's not around anymore. That's because the world changes. When people die, the world changes. You know, you live a certain life with your family around, and then when someone dies, the world is a different place. That person's not there anymore. And that was my first thought for 9 years. Now, imagine if I was still dealing with not only the death of my mum, the death of my dog, the death of my auntie, but also having to deal with the death of my previous parents and my previous family and the one before that. How would I function? How would I be able to get up and do what I need to do every day? I would be disabled. I already spent 9 years unable to have the clarity that most people are able to wake up with. And David Icke believes that the mind wipe, the superficial mind wipe, it does not affect your actual consciousness. The being level person that you are is not affected by the mind wipe. You're still you. You just let go of all the stuff that happens in a physical life that weighs you down. And the reason I know this is because I was put in school younger than most people. Obviously, my mum was dead, so Dad needed to get me out of the house or, have someone look after me. So he put me in school. Like, I went to preschool at 3, and then I went to normal school at 4, and all the other kids were 5. And I noticed that all the other kids were like, to me, they were like kids, but I felt different than them. They didn't seem to know things that I knew. And I'm not talking about academic stuff. I actually had to repeat year one. So I wasn't academically smarter than them, but I just had an understanding of the world that they didn't have. And I could see it and feel it in everything. Like, it was just very obvious to me that I was carrying something with me that they didn't have. And then as I got older, I figured out that there are some people that have also been here before as well. And it just made sense to me that I must have been here before, because I just had something already in me, even though I had no memories. I've never had memories from a previous life, but I just know that I've been here before, and other people know as well. And see, I gave David Icke a lot of credit for thinking that he must have been here before and he's come back to help us through this difficult time. But now I see that David Icke's primary focus of attention is escape. So I actually think this might even be David Icke's first time here. I can't say that for sure, but if you're evolved spiritually, you can't just look at what's going on in this world and think, how can I escape? That's not an evolved position. An evolved position is, how can I change this? Not how can I escape? That's the way I look at it anyway. I've said this before, and I've shared it with David Icke, but he obviously disagrees with me because he's holding firm to his belief system, which is interesting because he's the one that says that if you've got a rigid belief system, you won't expose yourself to other possibilities. So in David Icke's view, we have a mind wipe because we're not supposed to remember anything about the real world because this is a soul harvesting trap. And if you remember anything, somehow that means you won't be trapped because it will allow you to escape through elevating your consciousness outside of the limitations of the human body, which we can all do any time of day anyway. But I'm just trying to make the point to you that a superficial mind wipe does not take anything away from your consciousness. If it did, I wouldn't be the person that I am here talking to you now. The things that make me who I am have come with me from my previous lives. At least one. I don't know how many, but I've definitely been here before. So then at the end of that clip, David Icke said, when your body dies and you meet either, your religious idols, which people shouldn't have idols, but whatever people have, or loved ones, he said he explains in the books what they are. Actually, I think it was in the trap he told us that they're demons, that when you see your loved ones, they're demons. And he got this from, don't hold me to this, but I think it was like a sci-fi film where a lady died and she was in the place where we go in between lives, which is a place where anybody can go in meditation anytime. Your body doesn't have to die for that. You can check it out for yourself. They were in that place and they met their loved ones, but they knew it wasn't the real person. And in David's mind, that means that they were demons disguised as your loved ones. Now, I've said this before, but I'll say it again. This is an information system that we're in. And the flesh and blood loved ones that are dead. That body has turned to dust. It's not around anymore. Anything you interact with after your body dies or during meditation is a part of the creation. It has to be created. It has to be like rendered for you to have an experience. And everything we're doing is rendering experiences all day, every day. That's what life is. So if you're somebody who has like unfinished business with loved ones that you need to sort out emotionally, you'll have that experience after your body dies. It's for you to help your spirit process whatever you need to process so that you can grow away from fear and towards love. That's the spiritual evolution that we're all on. Whether you want to escape it or not, that's the path we're on. And assuming that they're demons just because they're rendered by the system, I mean, they can't come out of the ground or, if they've been burned in a cremation, the dust can't be pulled back together to make the real thing. It's got to be rendered for you by the system. But if you've worked through whatever you need to work through, you're probably not going to have an experience with a loved one. You'll have whatever you need, whatever your consciousness needs to grow away from fear and towards love is what will happen. And it may be that the system will render your loved ones in an experience for you. But that doesn't mean that they're demons. This is such a dark outlook. I can't believe that that David Icke is so attached to this, because it's not logical. It's only logical if you truly believe that this whole thing is just a soul trap. But what for? Just to feed demons? Demons are such a small and insignificant part of this. And I've explained why. I hope that explains why we need a mind wipe. It's not a consciousness wipe. And also to shine a bit of light on what happens after death. I mean, I've looked at this a lot too. I've listened to more near-death experiences than I could ever count. I know the work of Robert Monroe. I've shared that with you in this earlier video. And this next clip is about a 10-minute clip. I might make it a bit shorter, but he'll start off talking about Robert Monroe. Robert Monroe is somebody who worked personally with Thomas Campbell. And these are guys that have spent thousands of hours in the realm where you go when you quiet your mind, which is also the same realm that we go in between lives. For any Antichrist Christians who think that you're not to entertain the possibility of reincarnation, that is an Antichrist belief system. Christ himself said that he believed that John the Baptist was Elijah reincarnated. So if Christ himself said that, then that obligates all Christians to entertain the possibility of reincarnation. The fact that the church has told Christians that if you consider reincarnation, you're not a Christian, is exactly how you know that the church, and particularly the Catholic Church and the Vatican, is the enemy of mankind. They don't want you to know that you are going to come back to this place, so you better make it as good as you possibly can, because you will be back here. If the church let you know that, you would live completely differently than how you're going to live if you just think it's one and done and you can wash your hands with this nightmare. No, this is the nightmare that we have to fix. And I'm going to share with you how we can actually play a more meaningful role in doing that through meditation practices, through what I believe to be the real potential of transhumanism, because our consciousness is immortal. So the only reason we think we're not immortal is because we can't choose which body we go into next. But is that really true? Well, have a listen to this next clip with David Icke, and I'll finish on that.
And so the question I had was, I can understand consciousness being tricked, manipulated into entering this reality. But why do they come back? Because by this time, it was obvious to me that reincarnation was real. I go into this in detail in the reveal. When you see the evidence of young kids who I've described previous lives that they could never have known about, in locations they could never have known about, with people they could never have known about. And when
I mean, that's essentially the story of the Buddha too. That's how they found him.
But when they've been checked out, the stories, they've found to be incredibly accurate in detail.
Yeah.
There's a story that I tell in the reveal where there was a psychiatrist, an American Canadian psychiatrist called Ian Stevenson, who came across some of this stuff and then made it a life's work, basically. And he studied thousands and thousands of these reports, and then went and checked them out. And what he was trying to do was debunk them. Not because he wanted to debunk them, but that was his focus. I'm going to do everything I can to debunk this, to see if it stands up to scrutiny. And he found extraordinary correlations between what small kids were saying about lives in locations they had no experience of whatsoever. There was one boy who said that he was married to this lady who was still alive in this other place. And so they went over to check all this out. And and he said the boy was talking to the quote former wife as if she was still his wife. And then the wife said, "We never found your will. If you're who you say you are, we never found your will. Where's the will?" And he went over to a floorboard in the kitchen and pointed at it, and they took the floorboard up, and there was the will. And there's so many of these stories. It's clear to me that reincarnation is real.
Right.
But reincarnation is obviously real. Another reason you can know reincarnation is real is by the fact that your consciousness doesn't age. If you think about who you are, like the observer within, the being level you that is witnessing not only the physical world, but the part of you that is even witnessing your own thoughts, that's the real you. That part of you doesn't age. You can grow, you can learn how to move away from fear and towards love, but you don't age in the same way a body ages. So obviously reincarnation is very much a part of human life. And so now I want you to consider that little detail with the concept of transhumanism. We have these elitist psychopaths that don't want to die. If I was that evil, I wouldn't want to die either, because we may be at the mercy of whatever we deserve, whatever experience an evil person, you could say deserve, but you might just say what they need. So somebody like a Rothschild is not going to come back into a family with a lot of money. They're more likely to experience what it is like to be on the receiving end of a world where bankers control things. So they'll probably come back into great poverty. That's the way I work it out. But when it comes to transhumanism, these people, they do crazy things, like they cryogenically freeze either their entire corpse, or even some of them have their brain taken out of their corpse, and they freeze their brain in these like institutions that have all these really far below zero freezing of corpses and brains, because they want to come back when there's a cure for whatever killed them. Or another version of transhumanism is to have your memories, all the physical stuff that you get bogged down with in a life, transferred into a computer chip or into a robot. Which again, why would you want that? You don't want all the stuff that weighs you down. The only part of you that has any value is your consciousness, the silent witness within that observes everything. And they haven't figured out a way to do anything with that. But according to Elon Musk, for example, they can connect your brain to the internet, and somehow that's going to save us from being destroyed by AI. I mean, this is really dumb stuff. I can't even say it with a straight face. It's so difficult to quiet down your mind, to go to the place where it's just you, the real you. It takes at least 10 to 15 minutes just to quiet down that noise in your head. Imagine if you then allow the internet to intrude in your mind. It's all over. You will never connect with the real you again. You're just going to be completely consumed with this barrage of information from the computer system, and to me that would be hell, because to quiet down your thoughts and connect with the real you, I mean, that's a valuable thing to do. We all need to be doing this. And you know, people who have had these injections, who their body's full of this graphene and they're picking up this radiation field that tells them never to listen to any conspiracy theories. I mean, they all have the same stuff going on in their mind. They've been raped by this stuff they were injected with, and it's really polluting their minds with whatever information is coming off the towers or the satellites or whatever. But those of us who can still quiet our mind and get connected with our true self would never dare, would never consider even dreaming of allowing all the information that's on the internet to just bombard the brain. But apparently that's transhumanism. That's one version of transhumanism. It's all about overcoming the physical self in whatever way possible. And all the ways possible are all just different versions of doom, in my view. But the idea of immortality is very much real. You just heard that story that David Icke told you about little boys coming back with memories from previous lives. I mean, this is common stuff. There's a lot of stories like this. And so what I want to share with you, this is something that for many mornings in a row, just before I started writing that article that I want to share on Substack, but it's just gotten so long now, so might have to break it up into parts. Before I started writing that, every morning when I was waking up, this was coming to me. And this is why I think this is valuable, and this is why this is like the finale of this video, is for me to share this thought about immortality and the real transhumanism, which I believe we can all take part in. What has been coming to me for many mornings in a row is, as an elderly person is approaching their death, let's imagine that elderly person was connected with a young couple who were about to have a family. I believe that if those three people, the young couple who are about to have children and that elderly person, if that young couple has respect and admiration for the elderly person, it might be a grandparent, it might be somebody else, the three of them together could just meditate on the idea of, when that elderly person dies, could that elderly person's consciousness come back as a child to that couple? In my view, there's no reason why this wouldn't be possible, or should I say, there are reasons why this wouldn't be possible. For one thing, the consciousness of that elderly person may already be earmarked for an experience in another family, somewhere else, because we don't have control over this, but I believe we could play a role in it, which would just lighten the load on the helpers that help us transition. If we already have a young couple who wants to help us move forward, and they actually want that, there's no reason why they couldn't say, yeah, we want our child to be the reincarnated soul of this elderly person. But some of the reasons that might make it impossible are that couple may make perfect parents for another consciousness that needs to be raised by that couple for the betterment of the world. Or that elderly person may have lived a certain life that needs a certain experience that that couple cannot provide. So I'm not saying that this would work in every case, but what I'm saying is, if that young couple were the type of parents that could raise a consciousness, a being, that is exactly the experience that that elderly person needs to have next, for sure I think that elderly person could come back as their child. If this just came into my mind once and, I might not think anything of it, but this kept reoccurring, my first thought when I'd wake up in the morning was about this. And that's when I knew I had to share it with you. And because that Substack article is getting so long now, I've been holding this to myself for too long, and I need you guys to know about it. I need this on the public record, because when something repeatedly comes to me in the early morning when I first open my eyes, when I very first wake up, actually before I even open my eyes, that first moment when I wake up in the morning, that's when things come to me, because I still struggle with meditation. It's not easy for me. But that first moment is when I get valuable revelations like this. And, I don't know. I don't think David Icke will connect with this. I don't think a lot of people will just think I sound crazy saying this. But there's a couple of people who I would really like to know what they think. Like Dr. Joe Dispenza might have a valuable opinion on this. Definitely Teal Swan. I would love to know what Teal Swan thinks about the possibility of choosing where we reincarnate. As long as all three people are involved, it would only help to foster more meaningful connection between the elderly and the young. And also, this is not restricted by location, because that place where you go in consciousness when you quiet down your thoughts, it's non-local. You're just as close to somebody on the other side of the world. And you can connect with other people as well in that place. But you have to be an advanced meditator for this sort of thing. But three people who are advanced in meditation, an elderly person and a young couple, for sure would have to be able to, if the soul journey of those three people was lined up in the right way, I think for sure they would be able to choose. And then what you could do is the young couple could just look at that youngster's life and notice what type of a being that person is. Are they someone who you can tell they've been here before? This is something that needs to be experimented, I believe. You can't just test it once. But if this was common knowledge and thousands of people were doing it, and as those children grew, we could watch them and see what they know and, just find out. This is something that we can find out. All we have to do is experiment, and I think the human race, if we're going to consider transhumanism, that's the kind of transhumanism we need to be considering, because that's the kind of transhumanism that, it's not that I think it's possible. We already know we come back here. That evidence is already here. The only thing we need to find out is, can we choose the family we come back into? And I believe we can definitely have a say in it. And I would love to hear other people talking about this. I would love it to become like a mainstream idea, so that thousands of people are practicing this, fostering connections between the young and the elderly, and, giving life meaning. And, that's what this whole video has been about. We need to have meaning in life, and there is so much meaning to have in this life. And I should point out that David Icke is not the only one, and I know he's not doing it on purpose, but it really is just so easy to take meaning out of people's lives just by telling them that they have no control over their destiny. Here's another example.
I think there will be a day where we actually realize that human interactions are completely predictable. Free will is a total myth.
That could be a pretty bleak day.
Free will seems to just be provably an illusion.
It's so sad to think about all the people who just don't even know why they're here. They don't even know who they are. And, you know, how sad it is for David Icke to think that we're all here just to feed demons. To me, that's a tragedy. That's, you know, I hope this video will help to convince him otherwise, but if not, that's his path, that's his journey, and we've all got our own journey. And that is to move away from fear and towards love. That's what it's all about. I hope I've made that case to you. I appreciate you staying with me for so long. I know it's a bit of a long video, but I hope you value that idea about transhumanism, because I really think if we take that idea seriously, these absolutely ridiculous billionaires will just be laughed out of the room, which is exactly what needs to happen. All right, thanks for being with me. I'll look forward to being with you again in the next video. God bless everyone. See you then.